Testing. Hello. Can you hear me? Yes, fantastic. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Ellen, and I'm with the First Hill Improvement Association. I know, right? Yeah, lots of work to do. But each month, the Urban Design and Public Space Committee meets upstairs in the Sky Lounge at this time, the first Wednesday of the month. And today, we're having a special meeting and wanted to invite you all because our topic today is the Freeway Park project. And so, just in advance, I want to thank you all for coming and your interest in this project and coming to hear Rhys. Rhys Harrington is with the Seattle Parks Department. I will let him introduce himself. But just want to thank you all for coming and your interest in our prized park of the neighborhood. And I'm excited to learn about what Rhys has to share with us today.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Rhys Harrington. I am with Seattle Parks and Recreation. I am in the Capital Development Division, and my role at Parks is as a project manager during kind of the tail end of design into construction and closeout of projects. So I've been passed this Freeway Park project over to me to get us through construction. And this has been going on a long time. I've been with Parks for 3 years. I am a landscape architect. Worked for, I don't know if you guys know of GGLO, Karen Keast, Rich Haig. I've worked with all those firms before. And then I've always wanted to work with Parks. It's always kind of a dream for landscape architects to work in the public realm. So this is kind of my dream job. So to give back to our city, the city that I live in, and to protect our parks. So that's a little bit about myself. I think first I would like to, I have a lot of information. I haven't spoken to this group before. And so other groups I've spoken to, and I can just give updates. So I have a lot of information, and I was just going to start from the beginning that I know of and start to kind of go through everything. But before I do that, if there is something that you guys want to hear about, can I just get kind of a show of hands and I can make a list of topics? I just want to make sure that I hit on the things that is important to you. Yes, sir, you were first up.
Security and homelessness and junkies in the park.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
The water features.
Okay. Water features.
Are they being turned on?
Okay. So water feature updates.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Who has jurisdiction over Freeway Park? Because I've been told conflicting things, that the parks, it's not Parks Department park, the Parks Department wants nothing to do with it, and now you say you're from Seattle Parks Department and you have jurisdiction, so I'm confused.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go over jurisdiction. I actually have a slide that goes over all of that. Yes.
I'm going to give a very strong second to the water feature.
Okay, water feature again. Yes, ma'am.
Dead trees.
Okay, dead trees, landscape in general. Okay. Yes.
Washrooms.
Okay, washrooms. Okay, yes. Great, structural integrity. You guys are hitting on all my topics, so perfect so far. Yes, I'll go with you.
Again, safety.
Safety.
Do not go through the park anymore.
Yeah, safety.
I think a lot of us fall into that.
Okay. Yes. Litter, okay. Yes. Historical preservation.
Question over here.
Yes, I'm getting, sorry, I was trying to working my way back. Yes, ma'am.
Plantings, replacing plantings.
Okay. Yep, trees and plantings. Anybody else over here? Okay. Yes.
The picket corridor and how it fits into this design.
Okay, picket corridor. Okay. Anybody else? And this isn't the last time, feel free to, I'll go through some and we'll have some stops along the way that we can have more of a conversation about this too. So anything else that Great, thank you. So I have two presentations. This first one that's kind of in the black background was what we had given recently to the Freeway Park Association board. So it has a lot more kind of budget in our current phase. Then I have another presentation that is that we'll start off with that has the project overview on it. So let's start with that. So I'm just going to escape out of this one for a second. This presentation was presented to DAP, which is the Department of Architectural and Historic Preservation. It's a statewide organization that oversees landmarked places. So I think to start off kind of big picture, actually even bigger picture than that, Freeway Park is on the National Historic Registry. It is also a city landmark. So we kind of fall under two different landmark organizations. Not all of it is, and I have a image that shows what areas are within that designation. And so to, I think your point about just who has jurisdiction, that is also very complicated. I'll get into that, but Freeway Park is over a lot of different properties, and and it also kind of bleeds into some private areas. So it's very hard to determine which areas are Parks Department parks and which areas are the Civic Center, and what is Pickett Corridor and privately owned, what is in front of Park Place building down at Seneca and 6th. So it kind of straddles all of these different properties, which has made it a little bit confusing. We just did a very large $80,000 survey and historical deep dive to get all of this information, all the easements, all of the different pieces of paper. I mean, it goes back 50 years, as you know. This was built 50 years ago. So, and a lot of these were just handshake deals. And so we've really had to kind of data mine in all the records to try to figure out who has jurisdiction, who has ownerships, where are the property lines. So we're almost done, like literally in the next couple of weeks. And this has been a 1.5 year long process we gave our surveyor over 280 pieces of paper, documents, to sort through and try to map it all out. So it's been interesting. So, but I have some maps that go into that. So the Freeway Park project, I should say that Freeway Park it's really big and it has lots of different things going on in it, right? So we have the Freeway Park Association that deals with programming and fundraising and things like that. So they're an organization that helps us. There's the Seattle Parks and Recreation as a whole. Within Seattle Parks, we have facilities maintenance, which works on kind of all of the buildings and the mechanical work. So a lot of the fountains, for example, that we talked about, the restroom, anything that kind of has more mechanical or building features falls under facilities maintenance. We have the grounds maintenance, and that's the litter, the planting, the hardscape, like making sure that's all clean. They do a lot of the work in fixing up, getting rid of graffiti, things like that. And then there's my group where we get assigned a budget to work on a big project. And so that's been my focus. I can give updates because we have biweekly meetings about everything that's going on in the park. At the parks level, our deputy superintendent, Andy Sheffer, oversees kind of a group think, right, where we all come together to try to coordinate all of these things. So I can give you an update based on my knowledge of where we are on other things other than just the capital improvement project. So the original budget came from the Civic Center's renovation and Freeway Park Association and neighborhood groups and Horizon House. I wasn't here during this time, but my understanding was that they had advocated to get all of the community benefit or public benefit that the community or the Civic Center required to have was put back into Freeway Park. So since we are adjacent, so we were given $10 million from that project to do this project. So, and that was back in, help me somebody, was that 2017, I believe? Okay, around 2016, 2017 when we got those funds. So when we got those funds, we did not have a master plan for the park, right? We had been Seattle Parks and Recreation. As you know, that was even before, we used to go out for levies, right? To ask for money to do maintenance. And Seattle Parks and Recreation has over 490 parks. And so there's, every time we went out for levies, we had to divide up that money. So as you can see, and as anything built over time, the systems start to degrade, right? So this insertion of money really came at a perfect time as the mechanical systems started to fail, as our soils started to fail, as the irrigation started to fail. Not only failing, but from vandalism, where it got so bad that you can't fix it anymore. Like you're just like whack-a-moling, right? You fix this and then all of a sudden this is down. So that's where we went out and did a big master plan process with that, some of that $10 million, saying what do we need to have done? What big picture items do we need to have done? And then what would we like to have done? What do we want the next 50 years of Freeway Park to look like and to work? Because it's a lot different. We have a lot different city now today than we did 50 years ago. So one of the things that we really wanted to honor, and we have to honor the original design because it is a landmark landscape and property, we have to honor its original design intent, which was as a tranquil place with an adventurous spirit. It should connect the city and bring people together. And so when we thought about that, it's like, what did we want that? What should we focus on? That was to make the park welcoming, bring people back to the park like it used to be, and restore its role and reputation as a centerpiece of Seattle's park system and an icon of landscape architecture. And I don't know if you all know why it's on the National Historic Registry, but it was the very first park built over a freeway ever. Groundbreaking. And now you see this all over the world, but that first project happened here. Similarly, we have we have lots of landmark buildings, but another very important one was Gasworks Park, another really important groundbreaking landscape that that reclaimed kind of an industrial site for public use. So we're really actually privileged to have these assets in the Parks Department and in our city. Part of the design and the investigation in that first master plan was what areas do we focus on? And so the design team, Walker Macy, kind of focused on these three items: entrances, identity, and programming. So we want to strengthen the park entrances. We want to clarify and promote the park's prime areas. And then we also want to increase activity throughout the park, because as you know, the more people that are in there doing things, the safer it is, right? If you see kids in the park, you know it's safe. Parents feel like it's safe enough to come and bring their children. That's what Parks Department wants for Freeway Park. So here is a map overview of the park. Do I have a laser pointer on this? Yes, okay. So I'll start over here. Picket, whoop, nope, sorry, pardon my, okay. Picket corridor's here. And you guys can see, probably, picket corridor's here. And Horizon House is right here in that building. So the green outline is what falls under the landmarks designation. So not all of it falls under the landmarks. So Picket Corridor does not fall under landmarks. It was built after the fact. Similarly, all this area around Convention Center that looks like it's a part of the original design, and it was meant to look like that, so it would flow. But it's not under that landmark designation. And then there's also a private entrance down here in front of the Park Place building that does not fall under the landmark designation. It's on private property. We have an easement that allows us the public to come into the park from that public or private property. And we treat it as such. So we have an agreement, just like we have an agreement with Horizon House, to jointly maintain Picket Corridor and that Park Place entrance. This shows the complexity of it. So the area labeled number 1 and number 2, those areas are over WashDOT Bridge over the freeway. So the structure below the park is owned by WashDOT. We lease the air rights above the WashDOT property. Number 3 is also WashDOT, but it kind of is governed by SDOT because it's Seneca Street, but it's on top of the bridge. So it's WashDOT plus SDOT. Like I said, number 4 down below is the Park Place, and that's actually over the Park Place parking garage. So far, everything that I've talked about is on structure. And then number 5 is also on structure. It sits on top of a Seattle-owned parking garage. And then number 6 is also on structure, and that's the convention center. So you can see it's complicated. And Chris back there, he's doing the construction for Horizon House. He's like, oh, wow, that's a lot of people to deal with and also a lot of complex construction on top of structure. So the master plan kind of looked at the evaluation, looked at everything in the park. And back in 2018, 2019, when we got that first original evaluation, the cost to upgrade everything, just to get us back to baseline, was $27 million. And that was back in 2019. So that is redoing the irrigation, the lighting, the plumbing, the restroom, the structures, all the trees, like everything. Everything that we would want to do. New wayfinding, new signage, things like that. Obviously, we can't do that. We only got $10 million of that. So, but it was good to finally get kind of a big idea of what does this park need, so we could start to chip away at that and then also go out for additional funding and additional grants. Luckily, we're a National Historic Landmark, so grants are a little bit easier. Not easy, but it's a little bit easier. People want to give money to preserve something as special as Freeway Park. So we focused on my capital improvement project. We decided to focus the majority of it on the Upper Seneca, Seneca Plaza, and this little arrow pointing up here, that's that restroom, the washroom, that has been closed for years. And then we also had some other items such as new lighting design, upgrading the lights, and the electrical throughout the park. So I talked about, and you asked about who has jurisdiction over this park. And so WashDOT, it's their property, so we have to get certificate of approvals from WashDOT. We have to get certificate of approvals from the Historic Preservation Boards, which is DAP, the state level, and then also the Seattle Landmarks Board. All of those certificate of approvals usually just fall to the local jurisdiction. So we really just need to get one piece of paper from our local city Landmarks Preservation Board. And then we also need to have agreements with private property owners for us to move onto their property, to do the construction, to do some construction on their property, etc. So the certificate of approval process is broken down into a couple of different areas. One is these kind of big changes. For example, you'll see we were proposing a new restroom building in Seneca Plaza. Something new added requires the full Landmarks Board approval. But other items can fall under administrative review, such as replacing the trees or updating landscape or replacing a light. We can just go in through administrative approval for that a lot easier, so we're not held up on getting those approvals. Things that don't need approval is replacing anything in kind. So let's say a shrub dies, we have a vegetation management plan. As long as the gardener reads that preservation management plan, here's what the original designer intended it to be, then they replace it exactly in kind. That's okay. Other things like fixing items or graffiti removal, we have a brand new graffiti management plan as well. All of those things fall under just regular maintenance, and we don't need to go back to the Landmarks Board. I'll just skip over that. So what we were trying to do for this capital improvement project is preserve all of the original walls and most of the concrete in there, all of the concrete, the original pathways or circulation, the original really big, tall light poles, all of the pedestrian poles that currently light the park, those do not fall under the landmarks designation. Those were added afterwards. So those were an addition. But the lawn, the planting, and the big concrete structures, and particularly the water features, definitely all fall under the landmarks. So we want to preserve those items. The new elements that we had proposed, the designers had proposed, were new signage, new lights, the new restroom or comfort station, a couple of new seating plinths, a new stair to kind of help with circulation, and then modify some items such as handrails and pavement. So this is kind of the signage, what the signage group was going to look like, the family of signage. So we've been working with the sign designer and the Landmarks Board to make sure that this falls under their requirements, looking at replacing the pole lights and fixing the original benches and also making them more accessible. So, you know, how those blocks kind of going across, that's not very easy for people that need help like gripping and pushing up. So we're trying to replace those with an armrest that helps more of that kind of sliding over for anybody with mobility issues. So new benches. We also looked at tree removal. So one thing that happened once we started working with WashDOT and we showed them our design and what we wanted to do, they said, hey, we need you to do a structural analysis on our bridge. Because back when this was built, there were no seismic codes. And so we want to know what is on top of our bridge, and this is the weight that we want that it has to stay within. So they're being very conservative based on current seismic codes. Well, we had no idea what was underneath the soil. So we drilled down and we found out, oh, there's like 3 feet of sand under 12 inches of soil. And those trees love it. Those trees love the sand. It's amazing that those are doing so well. So, but sand is really heavy. And guess what? It's heavier than what seismic codes allow for now. So WashDOT, after we did this whole analysis of that, we came up with a design of how do we lighten the load. Part of that is getting rid of some of the big trees. Some of it is taking there's like a couple of different tiers, pruning trees to make them lighter, cutting down a tree but leaving the root ball and all the plantings in place. And in some places, it's so heavy that we'd have to also remove the root ball.
Excuse me, could you show us over here where you're talking?
That doesn't, where is Ninth Street? Where is, I don't see,
Yeah, this doesn't have any street indications on it. I apologize for that. This is Seneca.
okay,
This is 6. This is Horizon House and Pickett Corridor.
point to it.
Horizon House up here. That big white.
Is the street,
So where's this bridge?
The bridge is, let me go back to that original. Number 1, 2, and 3 on this map is over WashDOT structure where they have jurisdiction. We need to get their approvals before we can construct, which means we need to lighten the load or they will not give us approvals at all. Yeah, because basically the bridge kind of comes, it's basically all over the I-5 corridor, right? So this little piece right here, that's the convention center, is also on bridging. Yeah.
can we ask some questions?
Please, yes, this is a good time to stop. This is a lot. Thank you so much for being patient, but yes,
I mean, I'm not a geologist or structural.
me either.
But is there any way to lighten the sand rather than removing trees?
Yeah, the question was, is there any way to lighten it,
Or
lighten the
put something
load?
into the sand or
Yes.
something?
So we had 3 different mitigations for the weight. One is where we had proposed new concrete. Perfect. We'll take up the concrete, we'll take up all the sand, and we'll fill it with foam, basically, right? No big deal. How about the areas with plantings and trees that we could save the trees by just taking out all the sand? That gets a little trickier, right? How do you remove its growing medium without taking out a tree? So what we propose to do is to vacuum out all of the soil and backfill it with expanded foam pellets. Not vermiculite, but yes. Yeah, something like vermiculite, but it's actually a ceramic product that holds water within it, is lightweight, is porous. It can still, the roots can still go through it. So it's backfilling with all those. In the areas that were too heavy, that we couldn't do that, it was still going to be too heavy because of the tree itself. You've heard of, right plant, right spot. Could be the right plant, but in the wrong spot, right? Or and some of these trees were not original to the park either. They were planted afterwards. And they just shouldn't be there to begin with. But in those situations, that's where we do have to take down some trees. And the major ones that we're heartbroken, honestly, really heartbroken about are, let me get back to the tree one, are the ones, this big one at the corner of Seneca and Hubble. I mean, look at that tree canopy. That's a huge tree, beautiful tree. So we've asked the designers, like, what can we do? It's a very, you can't put a lot of weight on that corner just based on the structure below that area. And so we're having to kind of reimagine what can that entrance to the park look like? How can we open it up, have it be more sight lines? So it could be safer, it can be more visible, but it definitely will have a different feel, right, at that corner without that tree. Yes?
Where is the water feature? It's right outside our door.
And yes.
Can you repeat the
Historically, I mean, I
question?
was here when they built the park, and there was a period of time when they found that some of the trees were growing too big to structurally support, and
Right.
There was a period when a bunch of trees were removed for that area.
Yeah. So the couple of questions were, the comment was, there have been efforts throughout the years, right, that these trees love the site, unbelievably so, right? It's amazing that these guys love living in 3 feet of sand, but they love it. And so they're getting too big. They're blocking out the original design of the park. Like, I don't think Halperin originally thought that it was going to be so wooded. That wasn't the original vision of it. And so, yes, over the years, we've had to take some out, but we've never done a structural analysis like we had to do for WashDOT based on these seismic. And then your question was, where are we still in this plan? This is Pickett Corridor, and we'd have to zoom in, which I can't really do, but the water feature is within this Pickett Corridor up here. It kind of winds in that walkway.
Can I give a little bit of history?
Please.
I've lived on this block for 24 years, and I was on the Freeway Park board for a while and saw all of these changes. And when I moved in, the whole idea was, how do we fix the park? Because 24 years ago, it was a problem. It was loaded with junkies. It was a total mess. It was dangerous. The restroom was closed because there was a murder in it. There was prostitution in the restroom all the time. So a plan, they came up with a plan, a feeble plan, but the benches you see now were part of that plan, because that was to keep the addicts from sleeping on the benches and make it as uncomfortable as possible. They thinned out the park because they'd hide in the trees and attack people. So I've watched all of these plans for improvement, and nothing ever helps, except for about 2 or 3 years. At the Park Place building, there were federal offices, and they had a daycare center. And when they had the daycare center, they had patrols. They had federal officers, because they'd bring the kids out. They'd patrol the park. There were police cars on Seneca, and the park was livable again.
There is a presence
Yes.
all the time.
So,
Yeah.
so my contention is, unless the city gives us some resources, some patrols, you're going to be wasting $10 million, because it's going to go right back to what it is now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or daycare centers, right? Federal daycare centers, which, yes, bring federal daycare center. It's a really good point. Like as a landscape architect, you're taught that there are multi-levels of safety and security, right? There's just making sight lines in the park so you can see what's going on and people can't hide. There's keeping up with maintenance so it looks like people care and people are looking out for the park. There is patrols, and there are, the community, right? And so we are very fortunate to have you folks, and there's a lot of people invested around the park, and they love the park and they care about the park. I agree. I mean, not only for our visitors, but for SPR, Seattle Parks and Recreation workers out there. I mean, I feel uncomfortable walking through the park. I've had to go into places where we're investigating electrical, right, for this design, and I'm with two other big construction guys, and it's uncomfortable. So my part in this is to restore the lighting, restore the plantings, get things refreshed so it looks like somebody's looking out, their eyes on the park, right? We also, in other departments, for example, the park rangers, we have new park rangers. We don't have a lot of them for 497 parks, but not all parks need them. But there's a big push to at least get people walking through. And then it's up to us to call, anytime we see anything, to call the police. Because as you know, there's not a lot of police officers just walking through the park. We're so understaffed. But when we call them and keep calling, hopefully that will help. Yes, sir.
I agree with you completely. What architectural features are you going to put in the restroom to make it vandal-proof? And as you redesign the benches, can you make sure those little handles serve the same purpose as the ugly wooden blocks? Because if you planners, half of them live in Bellevue, are so clueless about how real people use this park, as the lady said, we're just wasting another $10 million. So what specific things are the designers doing, specific things, to discourage people from sleeping on benches and to vandal-proof the restroom?
Well, I first want to make sure that we are not accusing the Parks Department of not caring. I want to make sure that the words that we're using, our parks folks are front line. They are out there every single day walking through the same things as our visitors are. So I want to make sure, and if you guys see them out there, I always do, and they don't even know me. You know, I'm walking through there, I'm like, thank you for being here. So I want to make sure that we're framing this as we're all in this together, and how can we all like band into it, and because it's going to take all of us, honestly, to retake the vision of this park. So first of all, I want to make sure that, and our planners I live in Seattle. You know, we work in Seattle. We live in Seattle. Our designers live in Seattle. And their offices are in Seattle, and they're walking through the park. I can call them up, and they are like, we'll be there in 5 minutes, and they'll walk down. We'll look at a design detail. So I want to make sure that you're very clear that everybody, the Landmarks Board, the designers, Parks Department, we care. And you are correct that the deferred maintenance over 50 years is out of control. You know, it is, we're trying to bucket brigade a torrential downpour, right? Or whatever that, I'm sure there's a better saying for that, but you know what I'm saying. It's a lot that our facilities people can't do anymore. So a specific comment that you said about the restroom, how do you make the restroom so it's less vandal or more vandal resistant, right? First of all, build it out of stuff that doesn't burn. Every single restroom in the Parks Department system is set on fire. That's just what people are so frustrated out in the public that they have to get their frustrations out somehow, and those buildings are just easy targets. So one, make them fire resistant. Two, make them smaller so you don't have a place to live and do drugs in and set up camp. That restroom that's out there is really big, so we're bringing those in, making it smaller, providing more storage for Freeway Park Association, and then also having an attendant. So if somebody's out there, when it's open, having somebody out there. So yeah, there's a question.
What was in place when there was a nursery or
There's still a nursery, there's still a daycare down there, but I think maybe the difference was it was a federal one, maybe, federal offices, so maybe that was a different feel.
Is there a children presence down there?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it overlooks Seneca Plaza. Hang on, let me. Sure, let me take two more and then we'll get back to the presentation. Yes.
Yeah, I wish you would go on with your presentation.
Okay.
Let the questions come after.
Okay, sounds good.
Can I just make one comment?
Sure.
It's kind of responding to people's questions. I wanted people, I'm sorry, my name's Carrie and I work for the Freeway Park Association. And there have been 2 improvements in terms of staffing. I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. So we were just assigned a new head gardener for Freeway Park. We have not had a head gardener in the park since 2021. So that's going to make a really big difference. And Risa, who is the executive director, myself, and Jamie, I can't remember her last name, who is an arborist, walked through and identified all of the dead and dying trees in the park to see if there's anything that can be done to either remove them or nurse them back to health. So those things are going on. So there's going to be a lot more presence in the park because of the new head gardener, and also we're making strides to deal with the dead and dying trees. And I also brought some material here today if anyone would like to sign up to volunteer in the park. We have one with the First Hill Improvement Association. We're doing a neighborhood cleanup. And we have other things ongoing this summer. If you want to get out there and see what it's like, we have 2 new ambassadors. So we're trying to get people out there and make it a better place.
Thank you so much. Okay. So we had a lot of improvements planned for this first capital improvement project. A lot of it had to deal with circulation, getting down into and out of the large water feature, which is called the canyon water feature. When you get down there, it's hard to get back up. There's only one way in and one way out. And so we looked at how can you get kind of a mid-level exit. So that was part of it. Also, drainage was an issue. There's a lot of pooling water. Let's see if you can see right here. So this is Seneca Plaza. This is the big canyon fountain. This is that little cascade fountain. We had proposed adding another concierge station, which would be housed by Freeway Park Association employees. This would also have a restroom and a storage building. I'll point it out over on this side as well. So Seneca Plaza, canyon fountain, the smaller cascade fountain, and then this was a proposed concierge station plus a couple of restroom stalls and a storage area. So that was a part of our design that would help activate and have eyes on this area. This is what the restrooms look like, but we don't need to get into that. Restroom building. And this is kind of how it would look out in the site with the new restroom building, trying to kind of make it recede in the background, not draw attention to itself, not take away from the historic landscape. So restroom building and storage building. Up here in that area that is at Seneca and Hubble, where I said we were going to need to remove some trees up in this top area. And we looked at reconfiguring that entrance. Because right now, as you know, Seneca is really steep, and it's hard for people with mobility issues to come into that part of the park. So we wanted to make that a little bit more generous and have an accessible route. So currently, it's like this, and people are cutting across. We're making it a little bit wider and more generous, and also allows more sight lines into the park if we take out this planting and allow you to come right through, which also helps on our weight. And this just looked at the restroom building. So that's all I have for that. So let me get into, one thing I wanted to talk about, so we have a lot of plans, and a lot of plans cost a lot of money. And so everything stopped during the pandemic, and we picked it back up, and everything's a lot more expensive now. So we have been constantly fighting through that. So in general, construction industry standards, if you get a budget, 60 to 80% of that goes to the actual construction, and then 20 to 40% of that goes to indirect costs. That's the design of it, that's the permitting costs, that's the contingency, that's construction administration. There's lots of things, all of our consultants, the structural engineer, all that stuff goes into that indirect cost. For Seattle Parks and Rec, our standard is typically 65% of the budget is construction, and 35% is design fees. So it's a little bit high on the design fees, but it's to allow us to come out and talk to the public. We work for you all, everybody. So we come out and we do a lot of presentations, and we do a lot of community meetings to make sure that we're doing what's best for the community. So if we break down that $10 million package, then $750,000 of that $10 million initial budget went to Freeway Park Association. They've been utilizing that for programming since 2018, or whenever that initial monies came about. $3.2 million of that goes to the indirect cost, and $6 million would go to the actual construction cost. So our planning of this, we first had to do that master plan to figure out what do we even need to do, because that had never been done. Then we had coordination with WashDOT and an extra year and a half of structural analysis. We had coordination with landmarks and community, and dealing with constructability parameters. I'll just go through this. So back in 2019, when we did that initial budget, I think I said 23 million, sorry, I misspoke on that. Our schematic design in March 2020, our cost estimate was 18 million. So we did a value engineering. For our design development back in February of 2021, we got it down to $7.8 million. We value engineered again, and in our 60%, which included the new structural additives, came in at 6.4. So we cut out a lot, but it was still over budget. And now our 90% that just came back in, this is based on additional structural issues that we need to do, and also redoing all of the electrical in the park. At first we thought we could just replace the lights, but people have dug up the electrical, and it's failed so badly that we actually need a whole new infrastructure. So as you can see, we're still not at that 6 million. And that didn't include tax or owner contingency or this electrical infrastructure. So once you add all of that, we're at 9 million. So what we have done with the help of Freeway Park Association is to create a phase 1 or a priority construction scope that we will go out to bid in October. That's what we're hoping for. And then we've pulled out a lot of the WashDOT loading, like digging up everything and filling it all with foam. We have to go out and get more money for that. We just can't afford that right now. Also, the new buildings, the restrooms in Seneca Plaza, we can't afford that right now either. So we need to put that on hold. And then we have a little side slice of the pie with signage. That's going to be an additive alternate. So we want to make sure that we have something that we know we can get in budget. Because if we don't get it in budget during bid, we have to start this whole process all over again. So I need to get something that's below our budget amount so we can get that. And then I hope to add this signage additive alternate if the bids come in So the priority, you're probably like, well, what's in that 4.8, right? What are we actually hoping to get? So all new pedestrian light fixtures that work, the lighting infrastructure to power all the lighting, the restroom renovation up in the lawns area, restored site furnishings, so all the benches, refresh plantings, tree removal and pruning. We do want to lighten the load where we can, because we do not want, this bridge to fall down, right? So we want to try to lighten the load as much as we can. And then where we can replace some of the pavement where it's pooling water, but it doesn't affect, like, you know how sometimes you pull a string and then you keep pulling, it goes on forever? That can happen with pavement where you fix this part, but then it's not accessible anymore, and then you have to keep going. So we have to be really concerned with keeping our scope within budget. And then the signage. So we're looking at this as a schedule. So basically this just says that we are revising our drawing set to reduce that overall big project into this priority scope. So our designers right now is teasing that bigger project all out to this phase 1. We'll go back for landmarks approval and WashDOT approval. We will then go into bidding, which I said we're hoping to do in October, with a construction start in January, February, with the idea that all this will be done, because we have this deadline, right, which is FIFA coming, as well as the 50-year anniversary. This is our star park, right? We need to get it done and get out of there before all this stuff happens. So everything that I talked about was my capital improvement project. But I know that you guys talked about the water features. The capital improvement project doesn't touch on any of the water features, but our maintenance crew is. So the latest updates for the water features are that Picket Corridor needed a new pump, which they've ordered, and lining of the concrete basin, basically, because the lining was failing, the waterproof lining was failing. So we have a contractor, they've given us a cost, and we're waiting to get on their schedule. They're a pool schedule, so everything will be, we have everything, the mechanical system working. We're just waiting to get on their schedule to do that, which we were hoping. And let me tell you, Andy Sheffer, who is my boss and the deputy superintendent, this is what he's asking about all the time, is when are we getting the water features turned on? So Picket Corridor should be, I think it's going to be in July. Then we go to the Legion of Honor one, which is, let me go to a map so I can point. There's so many water features on this park. Get. Yes, yeah. It's a good question. That's a really, July of what year? It's a good question. But yes, this July, because it's just basically a maintenance situation. Yeah. So the Legion of Honor one, which is up here, up in 5, which is right by the convention center.
Where's the convention center?
This is the convention center over here. All this kind of dotted area, this is all convention center kind of property, and this is the convention center.
What is the Legion of Honor?
This is the Legion of Honor fountain, which is right before you kind of go into the convention center, past the lawn, kind of at the end of the lawn. Yeah. Oh. The comment was, it's over by where the Rose Garden used to be. Is that what your comment was? So people who
Yes,
who
and
know
it's-
about the
It's not in the normal route of most people from here.
right. So that one was turned off for some maintenance because somebody broke into the pump room. We fixed the pump, and we couldn't figure out where the water supply turn back on was. We found it. It's in the convention center. That's the other thing that it's like, how do you turn this thing on? Oh, it's all the way over here in a different building that we don't even own. But we found it. So that should be, if it's not running right now, it's ready to go.
It is running now.
Perfect. Thank you. One down. The canyon and the cascade fountain. So those are the two that are in Seneca Plaza. Canyon is the big one, and cascade is the little one. They run off of the same system. And this is the canyon and this is the cascade. We just did all this improvements to get the piping to go to sanitary sewer instead of storm. It used to, all of this just used to flush out into Puget Sound, which wasn't good or by code anymore. So we just did this big improvement. We got it all running. We turned it on. Everything looked great. You may have even been there the day that it was turned on and everything was looking perfect. And then it stopped working and our guys went down and there was a waterfall in the pump room. And we had a foot of water in an electrical room, basically. At some point, a leak sprung probably in the basin of the canyon fountain that holds all of the water. So it poured out onto all the electrical equipment that we just replaced. So now what we're doing is we're getting the electrical components replaced. That's not a problem. We've had to work with a, not even a water feature, but a envelope consultant that basically works on structures to figure out, to locate where this leak is. We thought it was irrigation. We checked all the irrigation. Nope, it wasn't that. We thought it was the water line. Nope. We thought it was plumbing within the fountain itself. Nope. So now we think there's a crack in the basin. So we're trying to figure out where that is and get a quote for that. So that's, unfortunately, that pump controls and the water that serves both of those come out of the same basin. Andy is like, hello, this needs to be working by the 50th anniversary and FIFA. So this is on a fast track, but this is, right now it's in maintenance court, depending on what they find. If it's a fix that we can just fix, it will still be under maintenance. But a crack in the concrete basin sounds like that might be a little bit bigger of a project, and it might come to somebody like me in a capital improvement project if it's a really large, complicated, coordinated project.
City of this covered by insurance?
Insurance. Is anything covered by insurance? Our buildings we have building insurance, but we did not, Freeway Park is not insured, no. We do get something, this is not exactly, I'm not exactly sure how this works. It's a good question, but for example, when Discovery Park burned down or Longfellow Creek, Camp Long, somebody burned that down, we do have emergency policies that we can enact for something to stabilize it, to make sure that it doesn't get any worse or doesn't harm somebody. But then the improvement of it needs to come from a budget. Right? It doesn't come from insurance. Yes, Carrie.
Yeah, I heard that when the freeway is closed, because they're going to be doing the lane reduction and they're refreshing
always working
the
on
freeway.
something.
So that's happening, I think, on July 17th, the weekend of July 17th. And I think they're going to do I know they're going to do a big graffiti removal that weekend. And I think they're also going to be able to more safely check out the infrastructure and possibly locate the problem in the fountain during that weekend also.
Perfect. Did that come from today's meeting? Were you in today's?
I
Okay,
heard it.
you might be-
Yeah, I'm not sure where I heard it, honestly.
Yeah, Freeway Park Association is probably a little bit more up to date on the fountain improvements. I'm just trying to wrestle our capital improvement project. But yeah, that makes sense where That's the other thing, trying to get underneath this to take a look at stuff, you have to close down the freeway to do that. And WashDOT doesn't really like to do that. So we have to kind of go along with their, oh, great, how can we coordinate? And if you're shutting it down to do some maintenance, can we also sneak in there, work overnight? Because that's usually when that happens. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we talked about, did I answer questions about Picket Corridor? Let me talk a little bit about planting. And I think you made the comment about the gardener. So I know that capital improvement project is doing a lot of stuff like the electrical infrastructure, and we're spending a lot of money on things that you can't quite see, or replacing lights, which it's like, okay, that we need lights and it will really help, but it's not really big and flashy, right? For the amount of money that we're spending. That's always the problem with deferred maintenance, right? You want to add an addition to your house, but you first need to do, you know, the plumbing or the roof or something that's not, sorry for my word, sexy, you know? So what our job is now is we're hoping to all work together. So I'll do my capital improvement project. We're coordinating with the gardeners and the maintenance staff. So when we shut the park down, which we don't quite know what areas are going to be shut down yet, we're waiting to get the scope of work from our designers. So when we shut it down, our gardeners can go in there and clean everything up and plant things and leave it fenced off to have it get established, right? And we can pressure wash everything. So everything gets cleaned off. We take out all of the graffiti. So at least we start from a clean slate, and it looks like a renovation, right? A full renovation. Because if our maintenance folks are just out there cleaning off this graffiti, somebody's doing graffiti over here, right? And so it's just like I was talking about whack-a-mole before. So the idea is to let's hit it hard between this January to July time. And hopefully, as things get kind of closed off, people will stop using the park in a bad way, right? Because you can't get into the park. So it stops that kind of habit of, oh, this is where you come to do your illicit activities. So we're hoping to kind of group all of that together and attack it on multiple angles. That includes the planting, that there was questions about the plants and the trees. We talked about structural integrity. There was a question about the litter and things like that. Did I answer that question? Restrooms, who has jurisdiction? We went way over that. Water feature updates. And security, I think we touched on talking about the park rangers. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's being repaired. So the problem with the irrigation up there was people keep taking the electrical access. So we're trying to figure out how do we, even if we do battery-powered controllers, that may be the solution, even though we have to come out and replace AA batteries all the time, but it's a lot easier to replace that than full electrical systems. Yes?
I'm sorry if you said this earlier, I was late. When will the park be closed and for how long?
So let me go back to that. We're thinking that construction, it's this bottom line. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see it a little bit better. So hopefully we'll have our notice to proceed sometime in January. And we would start construction in January and finish it up in June. We want to be done by FIFA, or at least cleaned it out. If there's some things like punch list items, some things that are, need to be picked up, that's fine, but let's get it all cleaned up so we can have FIFA and also the 50th year anniversary there. And then there might be a little bit of just punch list items that we can pick up after that. Yes?
So for the 50th anniversary, will all the water features be operating?
50th anniversary, yes. All of the water features will be operating. That is our goal, and that's what we're being pushed to do.
When you say that the park will be closed, does that include our access to the convention center, which is our access to downtown, for those of us who don't climb hills so well anymore?
Yeah, we will come back. We don't have those drawings yet to see what the scope of work is. We have a constructability consultant on board. And so our next step is, what areas are we going to do work? When are the best times? And they'll help us determine when are the best times to do that work. We'll work with Freeway Park Association, say, what is circulation? Because it's not only, it's like everybody's access to downtown, right? Is through, from First Hill through to downtown. So how are we routing people? Are we doing it around? Are we doing it through? Are we doing corridors? Are we doing, what does that look like? So that will be the next step once we have our scope of work drawings.
And my question was piggybacking on that. Is the plaza right next to the convention center is owned by the convention center?
Yes.
So they're working with you to make that a smooth transition as well, or is that part of your project?
What do you mean by smooth transition?
Well, the plaza right where the stone waterfall is,
Yeah.
that whole area probably needs to be cleaned up a little bit. It's sort of sinking. I don't know if that's
Oh,
a
I'm sorry,
structural
the
issue.
stone waterfall on the construction, I'm sorry, on the convention center
Right.
site?
Yeah. But that plaza right there, that's not part of,
That's not part of my project,
Right, but
and
is the convention center going to do anything in that area, or is it going to just stay the same?
Ellen, you might need to invite the convention center to one of these meetings. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what their plans are. We've communicated with them with our plans because some of our wayfinding signage we are installing on their site to make it just cohesive.
Question over here.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'll get to you next.
It's more of a comment than a microphone, than a question. I just wanted to say that I'm fairly new here, and I've lived on or in First Hill for most of the last 20 years, and the park has been my wayfinding place. But I also, with the Architecture Foundation, led tours for a number of years. And I want to say, and I still go through the park, and if I can convince someone to walk with me, that's fine, and if not, I go by myself. And I would like to talk about the advantages of making eye contact with street people and smiling and walking past, because nobody's going to leap out at me. I've had nothing but good experiences. I don't carry a visible purse. I carry things in my pocket. Sorry, I'm not used to this. But you may have a better experience than you think, and they may think of us as something other than background noise. So, thank you.
I'll be right with you. Do you want to go next? Here, you can use mine.
When you say close the park, what does that mean? Does that mean chain link fencing?
Yeah, there would be construction fencing where we're doing work. And then the question will be, do we expand that construction fencing and other areas that go beyond my capital improvement project and maybe in areas where the gardeners are doing work as well. And so that's to be determined in this next phase once we get the drawings. Yes, sir.
One of the problem areas of the park is underneath the overpass where there's...
Where the crew quarters are?
I'm sorry?
Where the crew quarters are, the 8th
Where the crew
Avenue?
quarters are.
Yeah.
And is there any plans to modify that? So instead of being a large area where people can camp and smoke dope, it's more of a narrow passage that doesn't invite camping.
I think, so you're talking about, it's kind of hard to see here, but it's basically in this area right here where you have that underpass. Previously, we had enough crew and staff that there are crew quarters and there would be somebody staffed there. With the lack of budget, we haven't been able to refill a lot of those positions. But with the new gardener, we're hoping that potentially that person could be in there, so at least there's presence. For my project, we're redoing all the lights in that area and making it a lot brighter. And originally, I have to see the new scope of work, but we also had kind of like art lighting. So it was less of just a utilitarian place, but more of a beautifying place as well. Again, I think the rangers are out there. But if you see people, you know, you can always call. I don't know if you guys have access to the Find It, Fix It app. Okay. That includes people that are camping. You can use it, and thank you for using it. I use it on things that are going on in my project. That's how, like if I need somebody to come out and turn off an electrical outlet because we're going to do work on it, I use that app as well. So it's all kind of the same system, and they're pretty responsive to that. Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you for this incredible program, and I hope you'll be back with an update.
Yes. Yes, I definitely will be. Thank you. Were you planted? She just like, and close.
And I talk to people in the park, and they're always grateful for even a hand wave, an eye connection.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I'm here for a little bit longer, so if you have other questions or comments, feel free to come up and ask me. I'll try to explain as much as possible.
Okay. Can we have one more round of applause for Rhys for coming out and sharing all this? Thank you. And before you head out, if I can ask you to just sign in on that little clipboard that's going around, that's in the back right now. If you jot your email down on there, we can send you updates as well for further meetings or project improvements and timelines and whatnot. So, and then lastly, Carrie just waved another clipboard at me. So we're partnering with the Freeway Park Association to do the One Seattle Day of Service. That's on July 12th. So we're going to meet at Freeway Park in Seneca Plaza at 10 a.m., 10:30 a.m., 10 a.m. There'll be treats and supplies, and we'll do some litter pickup through the park and around the neighborhood. So hopefully you can join us for that. It's July 12th. Saturday. Saturday, July 12th. 10 a.m. Yes. You can sign up on here and put your email down, and we'll get you signed up. You bet. Yeah, you bet. Okay, everyone's welcome. Okay. Thank you again, Rhys.